I crouched behind the Italian leather sofa, clutching a bottle of vintage champagne, waiting to surprise my husband on Thanksgiving. But when the door opened, he walked in with my stepsister, and they were not discussing turkey. They were laughing about committing me to a psychiatric ward to seize the company I had built for 2 decades. I listened in silence, realizing that revenge would not just be a dish served cold, but one served absolutely frozen. My name is Elena Corvus, and at 42 years old, I truly believed I held the world in the palm of my hand. As the CEO of Apex Routes, a premier logistics conglomerate in Chicago, I was used to controlling chaos, directing massive fleets across oceans, and solving impossible problems. I had arranged to fly back from London a day early, desperate to escape the gray fog of the city and return to the warmth of my family. I wanted this Thanksgiving to be perfect. I wanted to surprise them. The lakeside villa was dark when I arrived, standing like a silent fortress against the November chill. It was a beautiful, architectural marvel of glass and steel that I had paid for with 2 decades of missed birthdays and sleepless nights. I left my luggage in the mudroom and crept into the main living area in my socks. The room was expansive, smelling faintly of lemon polish and the cold air coming off the lake. I crouched behind the massive Italian leather sofa, a piece of furniture that cost more than my first car, and waited. My heart hammered against my ribs. I felt a giddy, almost juvenile excitement bubbling up in my chest. The electronic lock on the front door beeped. I heard the heavy thud of the door closing, followed by the familiar cadence of Gavin's footsteps. But he was not alone. The click of high heels followed him. I bit my lip to suppress a giggle, ready to spring up. Then I heard a laugh that made my blood run cold. It was not Gavin. It was Mia, my stepsister. "Wait, stop," Mia giggled, the sound echoing in the dark room. "You are going to mess up my hair before the guests arrive." My hands froze on the leather. Through the gap between the sofa modules, I saw the silhouette of my husband. He was not turning on the lights. He was pulling Mia into his arms, his hands roaming over her back with a familiarity that made bile rise in my throat. "Finally done," Gavin said, his voice low and satisfied. "The lawyer said Elena's fake medical records are complete. After tonight, she won't have any executive power left." The air vanished from the room. I could not breathe. I could not blink. Mia responded by pulling his face down for a kiss that was wet and hungry. When she pulled back, her voice was dripping with venom. "She is so arrogant. She thinks Apex runs because of her brain, but now it will be ours." I was still processing the physical nausea of their affair when the back door slid open. I expected someone to catch them, to scream, to stop this madness. Instead, my mother, Joyce, walked in. She saw Gavin and Mia entangled in the center of the room and did not even pause. She was holding a bottle of champagne. "About time," Joyce muttered, setting the bottle on the coffee table just feet from where I hid. "Did you get the papers signed?" "Everything is ready," Gavin assured her. Joyce let out a sigh of relief. "Good. She is too stingy and controlling. I am sick of begging for my own allowance. I support you replacing her with Mia. At least now the money will flow to the family properly." I felt tears sliding down my cheeks, hot and fast. My mother, my husband, my sister. But there was one hope left. One person who would never agree to this. Steps sounded on the stairs. Lila, my 20-year-old daughter, walked into the living room, the light from her phone illuminating her bored face. "When is Mom getting taken away?" Lila asked, looking up from her screen. "I need my credit cards unblocked. I have things in my cart waiting to check out." The final shatter happened inside my chest. It was total, absolute decimation. They were all in on it. Every person I loved, every person I had built this life for, was standing there plotting my destruction. They did not just want to divorce me or fight me, they wanted to erase me. I tensed my legs, ready to launch myself over the couch and scream until my throat bled. I wanted to tear them apart. But then Gavin's words replayed in my mind. Fake medical records. Unstable. If I jumped out now, screaming and violent, I would be playing exactly the role they had written for me. They had the legal framework ready to label me insane. Any aggression would be the final nail in my coffin. I forced my body to go limp, sinking back onto the cold floor behind the sofa. I covered my mouth with both hands to stifle the sob that was trying to tear its way out. I was not safe here. I was not loved here. I was prey, and the wolves were already celebrating the kill. I stood up from behind the couch, my legs stiff but my resolve harder than the marble floor beneath my feet. I reached out and slammed my hand against the main dimmer switch, flooding the room with blinding, harsh LED light. The reaction was immediate. Mia shrieked and jumped back, her heel catching on the rug. The sound of expensive crystal shattering against the floor echoed through the cavernous room as Joyce dropped the champagne flute she had just picked up. "What the hell?" Mia screeched, shielding her eyes. I stared at them, my chest heaving. I expected guilt. I expected shame. But Gavin did not even flinch. He simply set his glass down, smoothed the lapel of his blazer, and looked at me with an expression that terrified me more than anger. It was pity. "Elena," Gavin said, his voice dropping to a soothing, patronizing octave. "Oh, honey, you are having another episode. I told Dr. Eris this would happen if you skipped your medication." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Episode, I am standing right here. I heard everything. You were kissing her. You are planning to steal my company. See?" Gavin turned to Joyce, shaking his head sadly. "She is hallucinating again. The paranoia is getting worse. Honey, Mia is just helping me with the decorations. No one was kissing." "You are lying," I screamed, pointing a trembling finger at my stepsister. "I saw you. I heard you say the medical records were ready." Joyce stepped forward, her face twisted in a sneer. "Stop it. Elena, you are embarrassing us. You have always been this way. So insecure, so jealous of Mia because she is beautiful and happy, and you are just a miserable workhorse. You are making up stories because you can't handle the pressure." "I am not making this up," I yelled, looking desperately at my daughter. "Lila, you saw them. You walked in and asked when I was being taken away." Lila did not look at me. She picked at a loose thread on her sweater, looking bored. "Mom, stop screaming. You are scaring me. You have been acting weird for months. Just listen to Dad." Mia stepped closer to Gavin, boldly sliding her arm through his, resting her head on his shoulder in a display of ownership that made my stomach churn. She looked at me with a smirk that did not reach her cold eyes. "He needs peace, Elena," Mia said softly, her voice like poisoned honey. "He needs a woman who understands him, not a boss who treats him like an employee. I bring a softness to this family that you simply lack. You are too hard, too sharp. It is time for you to rest." "Rest?" I choked out. "You mean rot in a facility while you spend my money." "Mom, please," Lila said, finally looking at me with eyes devoid of any affection. "You need a break. You work too much, and now your brain is broken. Just sign the paper so I can get my cards back. This is really inconvenient for everyone." Gavin reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick blue folder. He placed it on the coffee table between us. "These are standard forms. Elena," Gavin said, tapping the cover, "power of attorney for the company, and a voluntary admission form for the Sanctuary Wellness Center. It is a lovely place. Very quiet." I stared at the papers. "And if I don't sign?" Gavin's face hardened. the mask of the concerned husband slipping just a fraction. Then we do this the hard way. I have a team of medical professionals waiting in a van just outside the gate. I have statements from your assistant, your VP of operations, and the HR director. They have all documented your erratic behavior, your outbursts, your memory loss over the last 6 months. The realization hit me like a physical blow. The errors in reports I had found recently, the meetings I supposedly missed but never scheduled. Gavin had not just planned this tonight. He had been planting seeds for months, bribing my staff, gaslighting me in my own office. You bought them off, I whispered, my voice shaking. I secured the future of the company, Gavin corrected, his voice icy. Now, you can sign this and go quietly with dignity, or the orderlies come in here and strap you to a gurney in front of your daughter. It is your choice. I looked around the room. Joyce was pouring herself another glass of wine, unbothered. Mia was clinging to my husband. Lila was checking her fingernails. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of betrayal. I looked at each of them, burning their faces into my memory. I memorized the mole on Gavin's chin, the smug curve of Mia's lip, the greed in Joyce's eyes, and the apathy in Lila's posture. You want me to go? I asked, my voice suddenly deadly calm. It is for the best, Gavin said. Fine, I said, backing away toward the door. I will go. Sign the papers first, Gavin demanded, taking a step toward me. I said I will go. I snapped, grabbing my purse from the entry table. You want me out, I am leaving. Now. I opened the front door. The wind howled, blowing snow into the warm foyer. I had no coat. My heavy wool coat was still in the closet, and I knew if I tried to get it, they would corner me. I stepped out into the freezing darkness, wearing nothing but my thin silk blouse and trousers. Don't expect to get back in, Joyce yelled after me. And don't bother coming back until you are fixed. The heavy oak door slammed shut behind me, the lock clicking instantly. I stood on the porch, the snow instantly soaking through my socks. I clutched my small clutch purse against my chest. My phone was inside, showing 12% battery. I was shivering violently within seconds, but the fire burning inside me was hot enough to melt the ice on the lake. They thought they had thrown out the trash, but they had just released a predator back into the wild. I jammed the car into gear and sped down the long, winding driveway. My hands were shaking so violently that I could barely grip the leather steering wheel. The heater was blasting, but the chill settled deep in my bones, a cold that no climate control could touch. I glanced at the rearview mirror one last time. Through the large bay window of the villa, the warm glow of the chandelier illuminated the living room. They were raising their glasses. They were toasting to my demise before my taillights had even faded from the dark road. I drove blindly for 40 minutes until the fuel light screamed at me. I pulled into a dilapidated gas station off the interstate, the kind with flickering fluorescent lights and iron bars on the windows. I grabbed a bottle of water and went to the counter to pay for the gas. I slapped my Centurion Black card on the counter. The clerk, a tired man with grease under his fingernails, swiped it. Declined, he grunted, not looking up. Try it again, I demanded, my voice cracking. There is no limit on that card. He swiped it again. Says reported lost or stolen. You got another one. I pulled out my platinum corporate card. Declined. I pulled out my personal debit card. Restricted. Access denied. I stared at the card reader, the realization washing over me like ice water. Gavin had not just locked me out of the house. He had activated a financial kill switch. He and the CFO, a man I had hired and trusted, must have set this up days ago. They had severed every financial artery I had to ensure I starved. I dug through my purse, my fingers trembling. I found 3 $20 bills and a crumpled 10, less than $100. That was my net worth right now. I paid for the gas and water with cash, humiliated, and drove another 5 miles to a cheap motel by the highway. The room smelled of stale cigarette smoke and desperation. The carpet was sticky, and the floral bedspread looked like it had not been washed since the 90s. I sat on the edge of the mattress, the springs groaning under my weight. My phone pinged. I looked down. Notification Apex Roots Board of Directors. Subject immediate termination. I opened it. I had been fired effective immediately for gross ethical violations and demonstrable mental instability detrimental to shareholder confidence. They had moved fast. They wanted to bury me before the sun came up. Then another ping. A text message from Lila. My thumb hovered over the screen, my heart pounding a painful rhythm against my ribs. "Mom, don't make this hard for Dad." The text read, "He promised to buy me the Porsche if I help him keep you calm. Just go get treated. Okay, be a good mom for once." The phone slipped from my hand and hit the carpet. I curled into a ball on the dirty bedspread and screamed into the pillow. The sound was raw and animalistic. It was not the loss of the money. It was not the loss of the house. It was Lila, my daughter, whom I had protected, whom I had given everything to, had sold me out for a sports car. I had spent 20 years building an empire to give them a perfect life, and I had only succeeded in raising monsters who would eat me alive for a check. I cried until my chest ached, until there were no tears left to shed. I lay there in the silence of the cheap motel room, staring at the water stain on the ceiling. The sounds of trucks rushing by on the highway shook the thin walls. Then something shifted. The grief hardened. It crystallized into something sharp, cold, and useful. They thought I was just a CEO. They thought I was just a woman in a suit who signed checks and gave speeches. They forgot who I was before the money. They forgot that before I was an executive, I was a coder. I wrote the original logistics algorithm that Apex Roots was built on. I knew the skeleton of the company better than they knew their own faces. I sat up and wiped my face with the back of my hand. I walked out to the car and popped the trunk. Hidden under the spare tire well was a battered, black laptop case, my contingency plan. I brought it into the room and plugged it in. The screen glowed blue in the dim room, casting long shadows against the peeling wallpaper. I connected to the motel's weak Wi-Fi signal. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. They had revoked my admin access. They had changed the passwords, but they were using the system I built. They stole the keys to the front door. I whispered to the empty room, a dark smile touching my lips. But they forgot that I am the one who poured the foundation. The screen of my battered laptop flickered to life, the fan whirring loudly in the silence of the motel room. The Wi-Fi connection was sluggish, barely registering 2 bars, but for what I needed to do, speed was less important than access. Gavin and Mia were digital tourists, people who used apps and interfaces without understanding the architecture beneath. They had changed my email passwords and revoked my biometric clearance, thinking that was enough to lock me out. "Amateurs," I whispered, my fingers flying across the keys. I opened the command terminal, bypassing the glossy corporate interface entirely. 15 years ago, when I wrote the source code for the Apex Logistics tracking system, I had embedded a backdoor deep in the kernel. It was a failsafe I had created not out of paranoia, but out of a programmer's habit of always needing a way back in. I typed in the execution string, a complex sequence of alphanumeric characters that I had never written down, only stored in the vault of my memory. The screen flashed green. Access granted root administrator. "Got you," I said, a cold thrill replacing the sorrow in my chest. I immediately initiated a mirror download of the entire server to 3 separate encrypted cloud drives. While the progress bar crawled forward, I began digging. I bypassed the public ledgers and went straight to the hidden directories. It took me less than 10 minutes to find a folder buried under a dummy system file named Project Replacement. I opened it and felt my stomach drop. 5 years, I murmured, reading the timestamps. You have been bleeding me dry for 5 years. The files were a meticulous record of betrayal. Gavin had been siphoning company funds into offshore accounts since before our 10th anniversary. I saw transfers labeled client acquisition costs that perfectly matched the dates and prices of the diamond earrings Mia had worn last Christmas. There were withdrawals for market research amounting to $50,000 a month, wired directly to a casino holding company in Nevada. That was Joyce. I had been paying for my mother's gambling addiction without even knowing it, while she lectured me about being stingy, but the embezzlement was small potatoes compared to what I found next. I opened the folder marked IPO preparation. No, you didn't. I gasped. The numbers were all wrong. Gavin had cooked the books. He had artificially inflated the company's valuation by nearly 40% by listing potential contracts as confirmed revenue. He was setting up a pump-and-dump scheme. He planned to take the company public, sell his shares at the inflated price, and vanish before the regulatory audit exposed that Apex Routes was actually bankrupt. I scrolled further and found the smoking gun. To cover the cash flow gaps caused by his theft, Gavin had taken out massive, high-interest loans from predatory lenders. And at the bottom of the digital loan agreements, I saw it. My signature. "You forged it," I said, tracing the pixelated curve of my name on the screen. "You put it all on me." By forging my digital signature, he had made me personally liable for the debt. If the company went under, the creditors would come for me, not him. He had set me up to take the fall for federal fraud while he walked away with millions. My eyes scanned a subfolder titled Payroll Anomalies. I clicked it, and my heart stopped. There was a shell company listed as a consultant, receiving monthly payments of $8,000 for social media strategy. The recipient was Lila Corves. "Oh, Lila," I whispered, shaking my head as the tears threatened to return. "You stupid, stupid girl." By accepting these payments for work, she never did. My daughter was now an accomplice to tax evasion and wire fraud. Gavin had not just bought her loyalty with a promise of a car. He had turned our daughter into a felon to cover his tracks. The download completion chime pinged softly. Transfer complete. I had it all. Every email, every chat log, every falsified ledger, and the metadata proving Gavin was the one who altered the files. I ejected the external drives and synced the cloud backups. I did not need to scream anymore. I did not need to beg. I closed the laptop with a snap. The woman who had cried in the dark an hour ago was gone. In her place sat the CEO who had built an empire from a garage. "You want to play games with the law. Gavin." I said to the empty room, a terrifying calmness settling over me. "Fine. But I wrote the rules." I lay back on the lumpy mattress, staring at a water stain on the ceiling that looked vaguely like a map of Chicago. The adrenaline from the hack was fading, replaced by a heavy, suffocating blanket of memory. I closed my eyes and I was 22 again, standing at my father's funeral. I was not crying. I was calculating how to pay for the casket. My mother, Joyce, had been draped over the coffin, sobbing theatrically. Beside her stood Mia, 16 years old, looking like a tragic angel in black lace. "Elena, you have to be strong," Joyce had told me that night, drying her eyes instantly when the guests left. "Mia is fragile. She needs things. She needs protection. You are the strong one. You don't need help." That was the narrative that defined my life. I was the engine. They were the passengers. I worked double shifts to pay for Mia's private school while I went to community college. When I started Apex Routes from a leased garage, Mia complained that I was boring and never home. Yet, the moment the company turned a profit, she was there, asking for a job. "I just want to help," Mia had said, batting her eyelashes. "I can be your assistant. Please. I can't work retail. My feet hurt." I hired her. I gave her a salary she did not earn and a title she did not understand. And then came Gavin. He swept in 5 years ago, charming and polished, the antithesis of my gritty, sleepless existence. Let me take care of the public side. Elena, he had whispered, massaging my shoulders after an 18-hour shift. You are the genius. Let me be the face. You deserve to rest. I had been so desperate to be taken care of, even for a moment, that I handed him the keys to the kingdom. I let him handle the investors. I let him charm the board. I fed the parasites until they grew big enough to swallow the host. Never again, I said to the empty room. I sat up and grabbed my phone. It was 4 a.m. I scrolled through my contacts until I found a number I had saved years ago but never used. Damon Voss. He was the CEO of Voss Logistics, our biggest competitor. Gavin had always mocked Damon, calling him a dinosaur who didn't understand modern tech. I pressed call. This had better be good, a gruff voice answered on the third ring. It is 4 o'clock in the morning. It is Elena Corvus, I said, my voice rasping from the cigarettes I had secondhand smoked in this room. I have a business proposition. Meet me at Lou's Diner on 5th in 40 minutes. Corvs. Damon sounded awake now. Gavin's wife, I heard rumors you were indisposed. The rumors are greatly exaggerated, I replied. Do you want apex roots, Damon, because I am about to put it on a silver platter. 40 minutes later, I walked into the diner. It was a greasy spoon that served truckers and insomniacs, a place Gavin wouldn't be caught dead in. Damon Voss was already there, sitting in a corner booth. He was a man in his 60s with steel gray hair and eyes that had seen everything in this industry. He looked me up and down as I slid into the booth opposite him. I knew what he saw, a woman in wrinkled silk clothes. No makeup, with dark circles under her eyes and hair that had been hastily tied back. You look like hell, Elena, Damon said bluntly. I feel like it, I admitted, pouring myself a mug of black coffee from the carafe on the table. Oh, Gavin, my sister, and my mother staged a coup last night. They kicked me out. They are claiming I am insane to take control before the IPO. Damon let out a low whistle. That sounds like a movie script, but why come to me? Gavin hates my guts. That is exactly why I am here. I leaned in, lowering my voice. I want to destroy him, Damon, and I want you to help me do it. I will help you acquire the market share of Apex Roots for pennies on the dollar. I will give you our client lists, our routing algorithms, everything. Damon crossed his arms, skeptical. And what do you want in return? I want a legal team, I said, staring him dead in the eye. The best shark's money can buy, and I want a security detail. I need resources to fight a war. Damon chuckled, shaking his head. Elena, I respect you, but this sounds like a domestic dispute. Gavin is about to launch an IPO. The street loves him. Why should I bet on a horse that has already been put out to pasture? Because the horse isn't dead, I said, pulling my laptop out of my bag. And the jockey is riding a corpse. I spun the laptop around to face him. I opened the file containing the fraudulent financial reports and the loan documents with my forged signature. Gavin is cooking the books, I explained, pointing at the screen. He has inflated the company value by 40%. He is planning a pump and dump. If you let him go public, he will crash the market. But if you help me expose him, you can pick up the pieces for free. Damon put on his reading glasses. He scrolled through the documents, his skepticism melting away, replaced by the hunger of a predator spotting wounded prey. My God, Damon muttered. He is leveraging assets he doesn't even own. This is federal prison time. I have 3 copies of this data, I said. Gavin doesn't know I have it. I am the only one who can bring him down. But I need protection. They have my daughter, Damon. They have everything. Damon closed the laptop and looked at me. There was a new respect in his eyes. He extended a large, calloused hand across the table. I will have my head of security pick you up in 10 minutes, Damon said. And my lawyers will be ready by 8 o'clock. We are going to have some fun. Elena? I took his hand. His grip was firm. Solid. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Damon grinned, showing teeth. Just promise me one thing, when we are done. I get to see the look on Gavin's face. Get in line, I said, a cold smile finally touching my lips. I have the front row seat. Damon set me up in a penthouse apartment on the north side, a fortress of steel and glass that felt like a bunker. For the first 2 days, I did not sleep. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, holding a pair of kitchen shears. The woman staring back at me looked tired, soft, and beaten. I took the scissors and hacked off my long, chestnut hair until it was a sharp, jagged bob that framed my jawline like a helmet. I traded my sensible cardigans for tailored silk and structured blazers. I was shedding the skin of the victim to reveal the predator underneath. But for the meeting with Gavin, I had to put the mask back on. I sat at the mahogany table in Damon's secure conference room, working with a team of 3 ruthless contract lawyers. We drafted a settlement agreement that looked, on the surface, like a total surrender. I was giving Gavin full control of Apex routes, full custody of the accounts, and stepping down from the board permanently. Make sure the payout figure is bolded. I told the lead attorney. Gavin is greedy. He will look at the money and the signature line. He won't read the middle. And the poison pill? The lawyer asked. Buried on page 45, I said, tapping the document. Clause 17, subsection C. It was a tiny paragraph, written in dense legalese. It stated that if the assignee Gavin was convicted of a felony within 3 years of the signing, the contract would be voided completely, and all assets would revert to the original grantor. Me. Gavin was so confident in his crime that he never imagined he would get caught, let alone convicted. The mediation took place 2 days later at a neutral law firm. I arrived wearing no makeup, my eyes red-rimmed from rubbing them, dressed in an oversized gray sweater that swallowed my new frame. I looked small. I looked defeated. When I walked into the room, they were all there. Gavin sat at the head of the table, looking like a king. Mia was next to him, wearing a diamond tennis bracelet that I had bought for myself 5 years ago. Joyce sat in the corner, sipping a latte, looking annoyed that she had to be there. You look terrible, Mia said, smirking as she inspected her manicure. Homelessness really doesn't suit your complexion, sis. I lowered my head, staring at my hands. I just want this to be over. Please. Gavin chuckled, sliding the thick document toward me. See, I told you she would fold. She doesn't have the stomach for a fight. His lawyer, a sweaty man in an ill-fitting suit who I knew had barely passed the bar, flipped through the pages rapidly. It looks standard. Gavin, she is giving up voting rights, IP rights. She just wants a $2 million settlement and the small condo on the east side. $2 million. Joyce scoffed from the corner. That is too much. She doesn't need that much money to sit around and cry. It is fine, Joyce, Gavin said, waving his hand dismissively. It is a drop in the bucket compared to what the IPO will bring in. Let her have her crumbs. I picked up the pen, my hand trembling theatrically. Gavin, if I sign this... You promise not to put me in the facility. Sign it, and you are free to go be miserable somewhere else, Gavin said, his eyes gleaming with triumph. Just stay away from the press and stay away from us. Okay, I whispered. I agree. I signed the last page. I pushed the document toward him. Gavin did not even read the first page. He flipped straight to the back, his eyes fixated on the victory. He signed his name with a flourish. Mia signed as a witness. The trap was sprung. The click of his pen was the sound of a guillotine blade locking into place. There, Gavin said, slapping the folder shut. Done. Now, if you will excuse us. Elena, we have a party to plan. The IPO launch is happening on New Year's Eve at the Grand Hotel. It is going to be the event of the decade. Mia leaned in, her voice dripping with malice. And I will be announced as the new vice president of strategy. Finally, someone with actual vision will be running things. You are taking my title, I asked, forcing a wobble into my voice. I am taking your life, Mia corrected with a cruel smile. Now, get out! Joyce stood up and walked past me without making eye contact. You were always useless, Elena. At least Gavin is a good son. He knows how to take care of family. I stood up, clutching my copy of the contract against my chest. I walked out of the room with my head down, shuffling my feet until I reached the elevator. The doors slid shut, cutting off their laughter. The moment the doors closed, I straightened my spine. The tears vanished instantly. I pulled out my phone and typed a message to Damon. The fish has hooked itself. Start building the stage for New Year's Eve. I stepped out of the building into the cold Chicago wind. The wind felt good now. It felt like cleansing. I hailed a cab, but I did not give the driver the address of the safe house. Where to, lady? The driver asked. The downtown shopping district, I said, checking my watch. I need to teach a spoiled child a lesson about economics. Lila was next. She had wanted a Porsche for betraying me. I was going to make sure she couldn't even afford a bus ticket. The vibration of my phone against the glass tabletop broke the silence of the safe house. I looked at the screen and saw my daughter's name. For a fleeting second, a mother's instinct flared up, a desperate hope that she was calling to apologize, to tell me she had made a terrible mistake. I picked up the phone. Mom. I need the 6-digit code sent to your email, Lila said, her voice breathless and impatient. I am trying to check out on the Prada site and the card is asking for verification. The hope died instantly, replaced by a cold, hard stone in my stomach. She was not calling for me. She was calling for my wallet. I don't have any money. Lila, I said, my voice steady. Remember you and your father took it all. Ugh. Mom, stop being dramatic, Lila groaned. Dad said the transfers would clear by tomorrow. Just approve this one transaction. It is only $4,000. Ask Gavin, I said. Or ask your Aunt Mia. They aren't answering, Lila snapped. I am at the Velvet Room with my friends. We have a table. I need to pay for the bottle service. Mom, everyone is looking at me. Then perhaps you should not have ordered champagne you could not afford, I replied. Mom, please, don't do this. Her voice cracked, shifting from arrogance to panic. The bouncer is looking at us. If I can't pay, they are going to call the cops. Come pick me up. Please. Just come get me. I closed my eyes. The image of my little girl crying in a nightclub tore at my heart. But then I remembered her face in the living room, bored and cold, asking when I would be taken away to the asylum. She was 20 years old. She had made a choice. You chose your side. Lila, I said softly. You wanted the sports car and the fun dad. Now you have them. You are an adult. Figure it out. I ended the call and turned the phone face down. I did not block her number, but I silenced it. I had to let her fall. If I caught her now, she would never learn to stand. I turned back to my laptop. The next step was harder, but equally necessary. I navigated to the insurance portal for the family plan. I removed Joyce from the premium platinum coverage and downgraded her to the state minimum. Then, I logged into the property management portal for her luxury apartment. I canceled the automatic payment that was scheduled for the first of the month. 30 minutes later, the phone rang again. It was Joyce. You ungrateful little witch, Joyce screamed the moment I answered. The pharmacy just told me my coverage is denied. Do you know how much my prescriptions cost? I am unemployed, Mother, I said, leaning back in my chair. I can't afford a $2,000 a month premium for you anymore. You are doing this out of spite, she shrieked. After everything I sacrificed for you, you are trying to kill me. I thought Gavin was the good child, I said, my voice dripping with ice. He is the one controlling the company now. Go ask the dutiful son-in-law to pay your rent. I am sure he will be happy to help. I hung up on her too. I opened a new window on my laptop and accessed the security feed of the Apex Roots headquarters. I had installed these cameras myself years ago, and while Gavin had changed the door codes, he had never bothered to update the firmware on the security system. On the screen, I saw the lobby of the executive suite. It was chaos. Joyce had stormed into the office, her face red with rage. She was waving her cane at the receptionist. Moments later, Gavin appeared, looking harassed and exhausted. He tried to calm her down, but Joyce began hitting him on the shoulder with her purse. "I need my money." I could almost hear her screaming through the silent video feed. Mia came out of her office, looking annoyed. She tried to intervene, but Joyce turned on her, pointing a finger in her face. I watched as the alliance began to fracture. Gavin rubbed his temples. He was discovering that being the provider for 3 high-maintenance women was not as easy as I had made it look. What Gavin did not know was that the pressure was about to get worse. Through my backdoor access, I had quietly rerouted the company's ready cash flow into holding accounts that required dual authorization he did not have. He was sitting on a pile of debt, with a mother-in-law demanding rent, a daughter demanding bail money, and a mistress demanding luxury, all while the company accounts were slowly running dry. I took a sip of water, watching the silent drama unfold on my screen. "Welcome to the real world, Gavin," I whispered. "It is expensive out here." The countdown to the initial public offering had turned into a death march, with only 3 days remaining until New Year's Eve. The pressure inside the Apex Roots executive suite was climbing to a boiling point. I sat in the safe house, watching the internal security feed on my laptop like it was my favorite reality television show. Gavin was pacing around his office, his tie loosened and his hair disheveled. He was holding a financial report that I had engineered. My back-end scripts had been automatically routing available cash to pay off long-standing vendor debts that he had ignored, draining the operating accounts faster than he could replenish them. To him, the money was simply vanishing into thin air. "Where is it?" Gavin screamed, slamming the paper onto his desk. $200,000 does not just walk away. Mia. "Who are you paying?" Mia, who was sitting on the sofa looking terrified, stood up. I didn't touch it. Gavin, I swear I haven't even accessed the accounts since Tuesday." "Don't lie to me," Gavin roared, his face turning a dangerous shade of purple. "You and your expensive tastes. Did you think I wouldn't notice? Are you siphoning it for when this all blows up?" "It isn't me," Mia shrieked back, tears streaming down her face. "It is Joyce. Your mother-in-law is the one bleeding us dry. She calls me 5 times a day asking for cash. She says you promised to take care of her." The alliance was eating itself alive, but the drama was interrupted by Gavin's cell phone ringing. He answered it, and I watched the color drain from his face. It was the police. 2 hours later, I received the police report through a public record scraper I had set up. Lila had been caught at a high-end department store on the Magnificent Mile trying to shoplift a $3,000 handbag because her cards were still declined. I did not see the scene at the police station, but the security guard at the precinct, who was on Damon's payroll, gave us the details later. Gavin had bailed her out, but the moment they stepped onto the sidewalk, he did not hug her. He slapped her across the face. "You useless little brat," Gavin had yelled in front of the officers. "I am trying to save this family, and you are acting like a common thief. You are nothing but a burden." Lila had run away from him. Later that night, my old neighbor text messaged me. She told me that a young girl was sitting on the stoop of my old apartment building, crying in the freezing sleet, banging on the door and calling for her mother. But I was not there. I had moved on. Lila was weeping for a ghost. The realization that she had thrown away the only person who truly loved her had arrived, but it was far too late. Back at the safe house, my phone buzzed. It was Damon. "The stage is set, Elena," Damon said, his voice grim but satisfied. "Every major investor in the city will be at the Grand Hotel. They are expecting a victory lap. I told them to expect fireworks." "Oh, they will get fireworks," I replied. I walked to the closet and pulled out the garment bag I had ordered. I unzipped it to reveal a tuxedo suit, but it was not black. It was stark, blinding white. In a room full of people wearing black tie to mourn my career, I would be the only thing they could see. I sat down at my computer for one final task. I attached the folder containing the forensic accounting evidence, the chat logs of their affair, and the proof of the embezzlement. I entered the email addresses for the Senior Fraud Division at the SEC and the local FBI field office. I set the delivery timer for 11 o'clock on New Year's Eve, exactly 1 hour after the party started, on the screen. I checked the server logs one last time. Gavin, in his panic over the missing money, was currently logged in. He was frantically trying to adjust the spreadsheets to hide the losses, overwriting data with clumsy, manual entries. "Keep typing, Gavin," I whispered, watching his digital footprint stamp itself all over the crime scene. "Sign your own confession." I stood up and walked to the mirror. I applied a coat of blood-red lipstick, the color of war. My reflection looked sharp, dangerous, and ready. The victim was dead. "Tonight," I said to the woman in the mirror, "the phoenix rises from the ashes of Apex." The grand ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton was a sea of black tuxedos and glittering sequins. It was New Year's Eve, and the air was thick with the scent of expensive lilies and the underlying, metallic tang of anxiety. From the shadows of the entrance hall, I watched them. Gavin stood near the center stage, looking dashing in a velvet blazer, but I could see the sheen of sweat on his forehead. Mia was clinging to his arm, draped in a gold dress that cost more than my first car. Her eyes darting around the room as if she expected the police to jump out from behind the curtains. Joyce was there too, holding a glass of wine with a grip so tight her knuckles were white. "Showtime," Damon whispered beside me. Inside, Gavin tapped the microphone. The room hushed. "Ladies and gentlemen," Gavin's voice boomed, regaining some of its usual charisma. "Thank you for joining us on this historic night. Apex Roots is not just a company, it is a family. And speaking of family, I want to introduce the woman whose vision has helped guide us into this new era. My partner and our new vice president, Mia Corvus." Scattered applause broke out. Mia stepped forward, beaming a plastic smile, waving to the crowd. "Together," Gavin continued, "we are projecting a revenue increase of over 40% in the first quarter alone." That was my cue. I did not sneak in through the kitchen. I did not hide in the back. The heavy double doors at the rear of the ballroom swung open with a dramatic thud. I walked through them, chin high, flanked by Damon Voss. The effect was instantaneous. I was wearing a bespoke, structured suit in blinding, pristine white. In a room of dark evening wear, I shone like a beacon, or perhaps like a ghost. A ripple of murmurs started at the back of the room and rolled forward like a wave. Heads turned, drinks were lowered. The hush reached the stage. Gavin looked up, squinting against the spotlight, and when he saw me, the color drained from his face so fast he looked like a corpse. He stopped mid-sentence, his mouth hanging open. Mia followed his gaze. She gasped, her hand flying to her throat. "Security!" Mia shrieked, her voice cracking, ruining the elegant atmosphere instantly. "Get her out! She is not on the list! She is trespassing!" Two burly security guards started toward me, but Damon Voss stepped in front of me, his broad shoulders blocking their path. He held up a hand. "She is with me," Damon announced, his deep voice carrying effortlessly across the silent room. Elena Corves is the senior strategic advisor to Voss Logistics, and as a major shareholder in this event, I believe she has every right to be here. The guards stopped, confused. They looked at Gavin for orders, but Gavin was frozen, staring at me with the eyes of a trapped animal. I walked further into the room, the crowd parting for me like the Red Sea. I stopped 10 feet from the stage. A waiter passed by with a tray of champagne. I calmly took a glass. I raised the flute toward the stage, locking eyes with my mother. "To family," I said, my voice clear and calm. Joyce was shaking so violently that her glass slipped from her fingers. It shattered against the table in front of her, splashing dark red wine all over the front of her silver gown. It looked like a gunshot wound. She let out a strangled cry, but I did not look away. "Gavin," I said, tilting my head, "please, continue. You were telling everyone about the vision." Gavin gripped the podium, his knuckles turning white. He tried to laugh, but it came out as a dry cough. "Yes. Well, as I was saying, the figures speak for themselves." He turned back to the massive LED screen behind him, desperate to direct attention away from me and back to his fabricated charts. "If you look at the projection graph," Gavin stammered, pointing the remote at the screen. I reached into my white blazer pocket and pulled out my phone. My thumb hovered over the red icon on the screen. "Yes, Gavin," I whispered. "Let's look at the projections." I pressed the button. The connection was instant. The backdoor script I had planted seized control of the presentation software. The bar charts and growth curves flickered and vanished. The massive screen, 20 feet tall, suddenly filled with a grainy, black and white video feed. A collective gasp went through the audience. It was the living room of my villa. The timestamp in the corner read November 24th, 11:42 p.m. On the screen, giant versions of Gavin and Mia were entangled on my sofa. They pulled apart, and the audio system of the ballroom, tuned for concert-level sound, blasted their voices into every corner of the room. "Finally done," the giant Gavin on the screen said, his voice booming like thunder. "The lawyer said Elena's fake medical records are complete. After tonight, she won't have any executive power left." The real Gavin on stage dropped his microphone. The feedback screech was deafening, but it did not drown out the video. "She is so arrogant," the video Mia sneered, her voice echoing off the crystal chandeliers. "She thinks Apex runs because of her brain, but now it will be ours." Then, the camera angle shifted on the screen. Joyce walked into the frame. "She is too stingy," the video Joyce complained, her voice sharp and clear. "I support you replacing her. She is just a stupid cash cow that has run dry." The video froze on Joyce's sneering face. Silence. Absolute, suffocating silence. Hundreds of investors, journalists, and industry titans stared at the screen, then slowly turned their eyes to the three people standing on the stage. I took a sip of my champagne. The bubbles tasted like victory. The shock that rippled through the grand ballroom was physical. It hit the stage like a tidal wave. For a heartbeat, there was absolute silence. And then the chaos erupted. Every camera in the room, from the professional news crews to the smartphones of the investors, swiveled instantly toward the stage. I did not let up. I tapped my phone screen again. The video of the affair vanished, replaced instantly by the cold, hard data of financial crime. Massive Excel spreadsheets filled the LED wall. High-resolution scans of invoices appeared, showing purchases for diamond jewelry, luxury cars, and 5-star resort stays, all paid for with corporate funds. Next to them, I projected the loan documents Gavin had taken out with predatory lenders, highlighting the clumsy, pixelated forgery of my signature. I walked up the stairs to the stage. Gavin was trembling so violently that the microphone was slipping from his sweat-slicked hand. I reached out and took it from him. He did not fight me. He was catatonic. "Welcome to the real financial report of Apex Roots," I said, my voice booming through the speakers. I turned to the screen, using a laser pointer to circle a massive red figure. You were told profit was up 40%. In reality, this company has been hollowed out. That $500,000 withdrawal, that was for Mia's wardrobe. That $2 million loan that was to cover the gambling debts of my mother. Joyce Corves. The crowd roared with indignation. Investors were shouting. Damon Voss stood in the front row, his arms crossed, watching the destruction with a satisfied grin. "This is a lie," Gavin suddenly screamed, snapping out of his shock. He lunged toward me, his face twisted in desperation. "She is crazy. She fabricated all of this because I left her." As if on cue, the double doors at the back of the room burst open. 12 federal agents wearing FBI windbreakers stormed in, followed closely by the Chicago Police Department's Economic Crimes Unit. "Gavin Corves, Mia Corves," the lead agent shouted, his voice cutting through the noise. "You are under arrest for securities fraud, embezzlement, and grand larceny." Gavin spun around, looking for an escape route, but there was none. He turned back to the police, pointing a shaking finger at me. "No, it is her company. She is the CEO. I just work there. Arrest her." I reached into the inner pocket of my white blazer and pulled out the folded settlement agreement we had signed just days ago. I held it up for the cameras. "Actually, Gavin," I said, my voice deadly calm. "According to the divorce settlement and transfer of power you signed 48 hours ago, you are the sole executive officer. You demanded full control. You demanded full liability. I am just a consultant." The color drained from his face completely. He realized the trap had not just snapped shut, it had severed his head. Mia began to scream as an officer grabbed her wrists. "He made me do it. I didn't know I just spent the money. Gavin, tell them. Get off me." Gavin yelled as he was slammed against the podium and cuffed. I watched them being dragged down the stairs. Then I felt a hand on my arm. It was Joyce. She had run up to the stage, wine still dripping down her silver dress, her mascara running in black streaks down her face. "Elena," Joyce sobbed, clutching my sleeve. "Elena, you have to stop them. They are taking Mia." "I didn't know it was illegal. You have to help us. I am your mother." I looked down at her. I felt nothing. The anger was gone. The sadness was gone. There was only ice. "You chose the weak daughter, mother," I said into the microphone, letting the whole room hear my verdict. "You wanted the one who was pretty and pliable. Now you can go visit her in federal prison. I suggest you ask Gavin for bail money, but I think his accounts are currently frozen." I pulled my arm away from her grasp and turned my back. From the corner of my eye, I saw Lila standing near the exit. She was watching the police shove her father into a squad car. She looked at me, her eyes wide with terror and realization. She took a step forward, perhaps to ask for help, perhaps to apologize. But when our eyes met, she stopped. She saw the wall I had built. She realized that the bank of Mom was closed forever. She lowered her head and turned away, disappearing into the crowd. I looked at my phone one last time. The news of Gavin's arrest had just hit the wire. That triggered the final clause in my contract, poison pill activated. Because the assignee had been charged with a felony within the probationary period, the transfer of assets was void. The company, the intellectual property, and the remaining assets reverted to me. The debt, however, remained attached to Gavin personally due to his fraudulent signatures. I walked down the steps of the stage. Damon met me at the bottom. "That," Damon said, offering me his arm, "was the most brutal corporate takeover I have ever seen." "It wasn't a takeover," I replied, taking his arm and walking toward the exit, leaving the ruins of my family behind me. It was a correction. I walked out into the cold Chicago night, the sirens wailing in the distance. Tomorrow, I would start rebuilding my empire. I would strip it down to the studs and build it back up, stronger and bulletproof. But this time, I would do it alone. I was done feeding parasites. The phoenix had risen, and she was hungry for the future. Thank you so much for listening to my story. Please drop a comment below and let me know where you are tuning in from. I would love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe to the Lily Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and smash that hype button so more people can hear this story.